Chapter 2. Boyhood of Parsifal. I have given you the general background of the Parsifal story, where it stands in history, and I have also told you of the troubadours, the poets who composed, each in his own way, different versions of the story. And as I said, I shall follow mainly the tale told by Wolfram von Eschenbach, but drawn also from Chrétien de Troyes and others, for there are beautiful scenes in each of them as well. So here is how the story begins. Spring had come to the countryside. It had come to the fields where the first leaves came from the dark earth. It had come to the vast forest of Saltaine, where the oak and ash trees put out their first green buds. It was a great forest, and even a man on horseback would have taken days to cross it. But only a few paths led through the close ranks of the trees, and only rarely did a wanderer pass on through these roads. But well away from the roads, even deeper in the heart of the forest of Saltaine, there was a clearing with a few simple huts and a little patch of ground that was tilled and worked over by human hands. Strange that people should choose to live so far away, so cut off from other fellow human beings. But spring had come to the forest and to the clearing, and as the birds twittered and sang a song of beautiful greeting in the morning, a youngster, the son of a widow, came from one of the huts in the clearing. He carried short hunting spears, and over his shoulder a bow and a quiver of arrows. This youngster was proud of his skills with the hunting spears. No roebuck ever escaped his aim, but the bow was a new thing. He had fashioned it himself only the day before, and he was eager to try it out. So deeper and deeper he went into the forest, and he started to practice his bow with his arrow. At first his targets were trees, but soon he got tired of aiming at motionless tree trunks. Then he saw a bird perching on a branch. The youngster quickly took aim and let it fly. He saw the bird fall, but the lucky shot gave him no pleasure. It made him feel sad and made him feel guilty, and it made him feel ashamed. And why was this? Puzzled the youngster, asking himself. He turned homewards to the clearing into the forest. To whom should he turn but his mother for explanation to the question, for the strange sense of guilt that he felt. Beside him and his mother lived only a few men and women in the clearing, simple people who served them and worked the land. They would not be able to answer his question. And beside his mother and the few servants, he had never in his young life seen another human being. The forest and the clearing were all he knew of the entire world. And so the youngster came to his mother and asked her, "Why did the killing of a bird make me feel so sad, mother?" And his mother said, "It is because you have, without need, taken the life of a creature, a life that God gave." "God," said the youngster. "Who is God?" And the mother replied, "Son, he is brighter than the day, and once to help man on his way. He lived as man on earth indeed. To him you turn in every need. But dark is he who by his art makes men from God's true ways depart. From him keep free your soul and heart." It was perhaps a simple instruction, but for this youngster who lived such a simple life, cut off from the entire world, it was all he needed. All the knowledge he had, and it was very little, was the simple kind, and his mother told him nothing that could rouse his curiosity about what the great world was like outside the forest. He knew nothing about the way people lived outside his own world. And so, having satisfied his question, the youngster went out again into the forest, happy to walk on the soft moss and to listen to the songs of the birds. But suddenly he heard other sounds in the distance, hoofbeats, and the clatter of steel against steel. Still fresh in his mind was what his mother had just told him, and he said to himself, "Perhaps this is the evil one, the master of evil. I will have my spears ready and deal with him in a way he shall never forget." And so, eager for this encounter, he hastened in the direction of the noise. But what he saw as he came nearer made him stop in his tracks. He saw 5 figures mounted on horses. Each of them was clad from head to foot in steel. And as the sunlight fell on the metal, the rays were reflected and made each figure shine, so that it dazzled all of the eyes. They also carried great shields painted in brilliant colors, and they had long spears and swords. The youngster had never seen anything like it, but had not his mother told him that God was as bright as the day? Surely these dazzling beings must be God himself. And so, as the riders passed by where he stood, he fell to his knees, lifted his arms, and cried out, "Oh God, please help me, oh God, give me your blessing." As he had fallen on his knees right in the front of the first rider, and the whole company had to stop. The first rider said to his companions, "This young fool here must be out of his mind with fear. He might be able to help us in our search, though, but I have to get some sense into him." Then the rider said to the kneeling figure in the road, "Don't be afraid of me, my good lad." "Afraid?" said the youngster. "Why should I be afraid of you? I'm not afraid of God. Are you not God?" "No," said the rider. "I can assure you I am not God. But I want to ask you a question. Have you seen 2 men and a lady passing this way?" The youngster paid no attention to the question. He stood up and continued to stare at the other riders. "You are not God?" he said. "Well then, I can only say that you are more beautiful than God. Oh, I wish I were like you. And if you are not God, what are you then?" "Upon my word," said the rider, "we have run into the silliest creature in this forest. My good lad, I am what is called a knight." "A knight," said the youngster. "I've never heard this word before, but I can see it must be the most wonderful thing in the world to be a knight. And what is this?" he asked, pointed to the shield. "Look," said the knight, "we are in a hurry. Have you seen these 2 men and a lady or not?" But the youngster had no ears for the question. "Tell me," he cried. "Tell me, what is this? What is this for?" "Help me," said the knight with a sigh. "This thing is called a shield, and I use it to protect myself against enemies, spears, and arrows." "And what about all this shiny stuff on your arms and your breast?" "This is called armor," said the knight, "and it also protects me against sword strokes and the points of spears." "Well, how wonderful!" cried the youngster. "But I'm glad that Roebucks in the forest don't have such an armor. If they had, my mother and I would rarely have any meat to eat. But good night. Tell me, were you born that way, with this shiny armor on you?" "No," said the knight, "no one is born with armor on their body. I was given this armor when I was made a knight." And that was the good news for the youngster, who cried, "Oh, one can be made a knight. Tell me quickly, who makes knights, so that I can go to him and also become one as well." "Well, our master, King Arthur," answered the knight. "Only he can raise men to the noble ranks of knighthood. But now, my lad, make way for us. I see you can't help us, and we are in haste, and we must get on quickly." As the company continued their journey, the first knight said, "Well, I wish I had the good looks of that young boy. There's no one better looking than him in King Arthur's court. But what a pity, with those fine features and strong body, and have a mind of a nitwit. May heaven protect that poor lad." But the youngster stood there for a long time, looking after the knights after they left, until the glitter of the armor could no longer be seen sparkling through the woods, and the hoofbeats could no longer be heard ahead. The little world in which he had lived for so long was now shattered to him, and in his mind was turmoil. There was now only one thought and one wish in his soul. He must find this King Arthur, and he must become a knight and get a shield and a sword and armor. The forest and the clearing had been his home. The faithful servants, even his mother, were no longer things that mattered to him. They were like shadows now compared with the burning wish he had. "I want to be a knight." And with this decision in his mind, he hurried homewards. His mother was waiting for him with great anxiety. It was long past the time he should have been back home. At long last, she saw him coming and felt relieved to see him again. She felt relieved to see him safe and sound. She received him with reproaches. Did he not know how worried she would be? And why had he kept her waiting so long? And what had kept him so long in the forest? But her son was a changed person now. He took no notice of her agitation at all, and he offered no apologies. He did burst out, "Mother, I have seen the most beautiful thing in the world." "Oh, have you?" said his mother, astonished. "And what was it?" "You remember," said the son. "You told me once that the most beautiful beings in the world were angels. But you are mistaken. I have seen something today more beautiful than angels could ever be." "Good Lord in heaven," cried his mother. "You can't be in your right mind to talk like this at all. What has come over you?" The son answered, "No, mother. I really saw these wonderful beings, and I even know what they're called. They are called knights." At the sound of the word knights, the mother's face became completely deathly pale, and then she fainted. The son stood there in a dumb amazement. What had he said which could have upset his mother so much? With the help of some servants, the lady was laid on her bed, and after a time she recovered consciousness. She sent the servants away, and then said to the youngster, "My dear son, for many years past my life has only had one purpose, and that has been to prevent you from knowing that there is something called a knighthood, or something called knights. You should not see any knights. You should not hear of any knightly deeds. You should remain in complete ignorance of anything that has anything to do with knights. and you come and utter the most hateful word to me, and destroy all of this work I've done for all of these years to protect you." "But why," cried the son, "why would you want to keep me from this knowledge of the outside world? Why should I not know about knights?" "Well, you shall know why," said the mother. "There never was a better knight than your father. No one better loved by his friends. No one was more feared by his enemies. Of noble blood was he, and so am I, the daughter of a family of high lords and the kings. And great were our possessions, great lands were ours, and hundreds of knights were at our service. But by evil and by treachery, your dear father lost his possessions, and then he died fighting his enemies. You were the only one left to me, a little child, and in my grief over all I had lost, I promised myself that you should not die as your father had died. You should not be tempted to risk your life for the glories and honors of knighthood. So this is why I came with just a few faithful servants to this wilderness, far, far away from the world of knights and their lust for battle. I gave up all the comforts, I gave up all the honors, and they were still mine due, so that I could bring you up in this solitude, safe from all the evil waves of the world, safe from the lure of knighthood. And now that I have told you, my dear, beautiful son, I hope you will see that there is nothing but death and sorrow in the pursuit of this knighthood. And you will forget the knights you have seen." But her son only shook his head and said, "All you have told me cannot change my mind, mother. I want to become a knight. I want to go to King Arthur. Life would not be worth living if this were denied to me. Oh, mother, you must help me. Give me a horse, and let me go to King Arthur at once." For many a day said Lady Argue and pleaded with her boy, but he who had never before disobeyed her has now been changed. He paid no notice to her grief, her sadness, the pain in her eyes. He paid no notice to her pleading, and only repeated stubbornly, "Mother, I want to become a knight." So the poor mother thought, "Perhaps if I dress him up to look foolish, and I give him an old mare that can hardly walk any longer, people will just laugh at him and mock him, and soon he'll just return back and come back to me." And so she made him a shirt from sackcloth and clothes made of different patches sewn together, and a hood with flaps on either side, a type of garb that fools would wear that would amuse princes with their antics. And she gave him the oldest, most miserable-looking horse she could find and he could mount. But the boy, who knew nothing of the world and the ways of the world, was as happy as he could be to leave. Here were clothes to ride out in. Here was a horse to carry him. Here was a light, slender spear to protect him. What more could he want? In his mind, the whole world lay open before him, ready to be conquered. King Arthur and his court were just waiting for him to receive him and to accept him as one of their own, a knight like them. He did not notice how in the last days before his departure, his mother's face became more and more haggard and dim. He did not notice she hardly ate anything. He did not hear her sobbing through sleepless nights through the walls. His own nights were illumined by beautiful dreams in what he saw himself as a knight in the future, and when he was awake he thought of nothing else. And so came the day of his departure. He said goodbyes quickly, for he was impatient to be on his way, and spurred his old horse into canter. He rode away quickly, without looking back once. And there stood his mother, lonely and watching as she could, as long as she could see him still. And when he was out of sight, and the grief of her son was no more, her weakened body and heart, tried by a lifetime of sorrow, could bear, a merciful, sudden death delivered her from the loneliness and worry and pain that would have been her ultimate fate. But the son, not knowing that he had seen his mother for the last time, not knowing that his departure had been a death blow to her, rode on, singing happily and cheerily through the dark forest and into the world. Hanschen klein ging allein in die weites Welt hinein. Stark und Hut stehen gut, es ist Vergemut. Aber Mutter weinet sehr, hat nun kein Hanschen mehr. Hanschen klein ging allein in die weites Welt hinein.